Hey there, my name's Stan Prokopenko. Thanks for watching Proko. This is the first figure drawing video, and it's probably one of the most important. In this lesson, I'll be covering gesture. What the butt munch is gesture anyway? Gesture, rhythm, motion, action, flow. These are all words that are used interchangeably and they basically mean the same thing. They all refer to the movement between things. It's not the contours or the forms or the tones, it's the movement that connects the contours, forms, and tones. For example, if you have 3 balls, the gesture here would be a C-curve that describes the relationship of these balls. This would be the contour, but this is the gesture. It's simple to understand, but difficult to put into practice when you're actually drawing a human figure. We're so tempted to draw the details of the anatomy and all the little bumps of the contour because we think the details will make our drawing look better. But the reality is, the detail is nothing without the gesture. You might accidentally get some gesture while you're copying the contours, but I don't like to rely on accidents. A better approach would be to practice finding the gesture of the figure so many times that it becomes second nature. Quick sketch is a common exercise in art school that involves drawing the model from life within a few minutes. A typical quick sketch lesson lasts 2 to 3 hours with poses ranging from 30 seconds to 10 minutes per pose. Gesture is the primary concern. Doing this exercise will train you to see the gesture immediately. You can feel it. Then you'll be able to design the details to complement the gesture instead of copying details randomly. Your journey of mastering quick sketch will be a long but exciting one. There's a lot to learn, and every time you learn something new, your sketches will show improvement. During a normal session, you'll finish anywhere from 25 to 100 drawings. Think about that. You're drawing the human figure up to 100 times within a few hours. If you do this on a regular basis, you're gonna get better. The best thing about it is it's actually fun, if you don't stress over it. In this video, I'll go over all the concepts you need to know for a successful quick sketch drawing that focuses completely on gesture. In future videos, I'll build onto that and introduce additional concepts, all of which come together. And in the end, with enough practice, you can use all these concepts to produce a completed quick sketch drawing in 5 to 10 minutes. Gesture is in everything, not just the figure. It's in the clouds, waves, trees, mountains. George Bridgman describes it like this.
Rhythm was not invented. It has been the measured motion of the universe since the beginning of time. There is rhythm in the movement of the sea and tides, stars and planets, trees and grasses, clouds and thistledowns. It is a part of all animal and plant life. It is the movement of uttered words, expressed in their accented and unaccounted syllables, and in the grouping and pauses of speech. Both poetry and music are the embodiment, in appropriate rhythmical sounds, of beautiful thought, imagination, or emotion. Without rhythm, there could be no poetry or music. In drawing and painting, there is rhythm in outline, color, light, and shade. George Bridgman.
Wow, that's deep. So basically, gesture is in everything around us. It's an approach to drawing that you can use to draw anything. Gesture is by far the most important element of drawing the figure. All the other elements of the drawing should work to complement and agree with the gesture. Gesture is the motion, the action, the body language, the energy, the story, the idea, the message. Without gesture, the drawing is static and boring. It has no story. Use gesture to tell a story by capturing the body language. We use our whole body, not just words, to communicate ideas and emotions. This is what the gesture should capture. What is the person doing? What is he feeling? What did he just do? Or what is he going to do? This could be told through just a few lines, which the viewer will recognize as the body and can identify the emotions the person is feeling, just like we can intuitively identify emotions of the people around us. It's a good idea to exaggerate the pose to tell a better story. As you become more skilled in exaggerating, you'll also improve in capturing the subtleties. You're probably thinking, Stan, is this another April Fool's joke? Are you drawing another stick figure? No, don't think of it as a stick figure, because that could make your drawing stiff. They're not sticks. They're not straight lines. They're action lines. Observe the pose and analyze the movement. It's more about how it feels rather than how it looks. Later, we will add more structure to these drawings to make the figures feel more solid and real. So for those of you that don't find this inspiring and are thinking, I don't want my people to look like spaghetti, remember that this is not meant to be as a finished drawing. It's an exercise to practice a concept. You're training your mind to see rhythm in everything you draw. You're training your mind to consider more than just the contours when you're drawing shape. It's an important concept that needs to be intuitive. In all these drawings that you're seeing now, the element of gesture was applied to the anatomy to make the figure dynamic. Let's go over some important concepts to remember while practicing your gesture drawings. The longest axis. When you look at a form and try to find the gesture, look at its longest axis. Going down the length of the torso, down the length of the leg, down the length of the arm. It's in the longest axis of each form where you'll find the fluid motion from one form to the next. CSI. To eliminate unnecessary information and to capture that gesture, the lines you use should be simple. Don't use anything more complicated than a C-curve, S-curve, or straight. You can use combinations of these curves as you move down the figure, but attempt to do it in as few lines as possible using the simplest lines, C, S, or I. Simplify without losing the idea. The other extreme is you can oversimplify and lose some important subtlety that's a major part in communicating the body language. For example, here the hands curving back up are very important to show the person saying, stop, don't hurt me, don't come any closer. If you oversimplify the curve of the arm to group the hand and arm into one C-curve, you lose that message. It's not as effective. So there's a balance between simplifying and adding detail to show just enough and capture the idea. Because if it's an important part to capture the idea, then it's an important part of the gesture. So make sure you identify the message and the story of the pose. Then figure out which lines are the most important in communicating that story. Line of action. Start by finding the longest action line of the body. Try to find a curve that could connect the head to the toes. Not all poses can be efficiently described with one long line that connects the head to the toes, but there is always one main line that shows a directional flow of the pose. This is called the line of action. In this pose, the line of action would be a C-curve, showing the major flow from the torso to the legs. But this doesn't tell the whole story, so this pose would need to be broken up into more parts. I think this sharp turn in the hips is important, so describing it with a soft curve isn't right. In this case, I would use a combination of a C-curve for the torso and S-curves for the legs. This pose has a nice S-curve all the way down. This one has a C-curve from the head to the left toe. This pose is really tense. I would use a zigzag to describe it. Relaxed and tense curves. The bendiness of the curve you use changes how the gesture feels. A longer, fluid curve feels relaxed and moves the eye quickly through that flow. As you start to bend that curve more, you show more energy and more tension in the gesture. Eventually, when it's bent far enough, you can use a zigzag. A zigzag indicates tension, sharp corners, very sudden changes in the movement. Nature presents this very well with water. When the water is calm, the waves flow in an S-curve rhythm. During a storm, when there's more energy in the water, the waves flow in a zigzag pattern. So when you want to create tension, think zigzag. When you want to show something is relaxed, use a flowing curve. The center line. One of the best places to start identifying the line of action of the pose is in the center line of the torso. In the front, it's from the pit of the neck down the center of the pecs to the belly button and to the pubic bone. In the back, you simply use the length of the spine. After getting this portion, you can continue that line up the neck and head, and at the bottom, continue it down one of the legs if possible. Even in this compressed pose, when you don't actually see the center line in the front or spine in the back, you'll still use the curvature of the spine and continue it through the bottom of the leg. Let's take a closer look at the natural curvature of the spine. There are three sections: cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. Or an easier way to think of it is the neck, rib cage, and lower back. The curvature is two S-curves. The neck curves forward, then back out over the roundness of the rib cage, into the lower back, and out at the sacrum, and that curve continues over the form of the gluteus maximus. You can continue this concept of stacking curves down the whole body: head and neck, rib cage and lower back, gluteus and the curve of the femur, calf to heel. Movement of the spine. Let's examine the movement of the spine so we know which areas we can push a bendier curve and which areas don't bend much. The neck or cervical area is the most flexible region. It can rotate, bend forward, backward, and sideways. The ribcage area, or the thoracic portion of the spine, can rotate far, but is very limited in the flexion, extension, and lateral bending. The lumbar region, or lower back, is the opposite of the thoracic. It's limited in its rotation, but allows for more flexion, extension, and lateral motion. The gesture of the limbs. The torso is a great place to find a center line because of its natural symmetry. With limbs, it doesn't make as much sense because they're not symmetrical individually. When looking at both arms, then yes, they are symmetrical. But when looking at just one, there is no symmetry there. So finding a center line isn't relevant. With the limbs, consider the flow and use the outsides. There's a bunch of bumps along the contours, like this leg from the front. You have the adductor group, vastus medialis, the calf muscles, gluteus medius, vastus lateralis, and the calf on the other side. There's a lot of bumps there, and it's easy to make it really stiff by drawing a bunch of curves going down the leg. But that doesn't show the gesture. To find the gesture, don't look for the curviest bumps, but rather the longest lasting curve. This is the gesture of the large form. So I'll identify that first, and then add the smaller volumes on top. This way you get a much more fluid, natural looking leg. The asymmetry of the body. Consider the asymmetrical aspect of the body from the side. The forms alternate in angle from head, rib cage, pelvis, upper leg, and lower leg. The spine has this wavy curve to it which causes the forms to angle with it. The rib cage naturally angles back and the pelvis forward. The neck brings the head forward. So we have these alternating curves coming down the figure: head, upper back, front of the body, and the booty. Then coming down the legs, the thigh curves out forward, and then the calf out backward. This causes alternating C-curves that lead the eye through the body, like a river flowing through a stream. The same thing is true for the leg from the front, and also the arm from the side. The rhythms alternate from the deltoid to the tricep, bicep, elbow, ridge group of the forearm, extensors of the forearm, corner of the wrist, and curve of the tips of the fingers. This asymmetry and alternating rhythms create the flow between the forms. The tendency for us is to make things symmetrical, but this stiffens the gesture and makes the figure look like a snowman. Cross contour. Gesture is about capturing the motion, but not all the motion is left to right or up and down. Sometimes the long axis of the forms will move towards us or away from us. Sometimes the motion will be towards the viewer or away from the viewer. The best way to show this is by identifying some cross-contour lines. I'll go into much more detail about this in the structure video, but basically think of this in terms of cylinders. If the cylinder moves away from you from bottom up, then the cross-contour line will wrap over the form like this. If it's coming at you, the curve will be the opposite. So when there is more movement coming at us than there is left, right, up, down, show it through cross-contour across the form. Next week, I'll show some examples of gesture quick sketches and guide you step by step through the process. But I suggest you attempt to practice these concepts on your own before watching the step-by-step video next week. You'll have an idea of what it's like and will be able to pull more information from it because you know what to look for. You'll have questions you can focus on, and you can compare what you did with what I do. If you need reference photos, I have some pose file sets you can get at proco.com/poses. If you like this video, share the wealth. Tell your friends. Post it on your favorite social network. And click this button here to subscribe to the Proco newsletter if you want to be updated about new videos. Bye-bye! The other